Hey guys, and welcome to the first video of my channel. Today I'll be teaching you how to make an HTTP request to a mobile apps API using node.js. So like, comment, subscribe, and follow my social media, which will be linked in the description. And that's all, so let's get right to it. Alright, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about the recommended experience level to follow along with the video. And I'd say that any entry or new developer, beginners, intermediates, and pretty much anyone with no programming experience should be able to follow along. I would just suggest you like review the basic syntax of the JavaScript language, and yeah, that's all. All right, so I'm just gonna jump right in here, guys. So here's a brief outline of what's to be expected in the video. First, we're gonna go over the system requirements you guys need. Then we're gonna look at how to find mobile endpoints. So we're gonna use Charles Proxy for that process. And then right after that, we're just gonna learn how to make a request to the endpoints that we find from Charles Proxy. So yeah, that'll be exciting. And let's just jump right in here, guys. All right, so first, you guys want to make sure you have the latest version of Node.js and npm installed. And don't worry too much about figuring out what that is. I'll walk you through that part in the next segment. Next, you guys want to ensure that you have Charles Proxy 4.5.1 or above. And then, of course, you want to make sure you have one of the three operating systems, Mac OS, Windows, or Linux. Okay, so here I'll be giving you guys a look at the install pages for Charles and Node.js. So here's the Node.js install page. As you see, we have the Windows installer, 32-bit or 64-bit version, and then you also have the Mac OS installer right below that for the 64-bit version. And as you see, there are binaries that you can install, but I don't recommend you guys use that unless you're more advanced because it's a longer process and is a lot more intricate. So yeah, just stick to the regular Windows and Mac OS installers. All right, so here's the Charles Proxy install page. And as you see here is for Linux 64-bit, Windows 64-bit, and Mac OS 64-bit. And it's a simple install. And yeah, you should be up and ready and be able to follow along with the video after simply just following the installer's instructions and getting this on your system. All right, guys, so we're ready to start coding a little bit. So I'm gonna start here by initializing our repository. So if you're on Mac, what you want to do is press spacebar and command to open up your search, and then you want to type in the terminal. And then when you get your terminal up, you want to change directories to your desktop. So type the command cd in desktop. And then once you get on your desktop, we're gonna make the folder for making the requests for the project. So what you want to do is you want to type in make directory, and then we're just gonna name this mobile request tutorial, well dash tut, and then you want to change directory to the one you just made, mobile request dash tut, or whatever you'd like to call it. And then now you want to type in command touch, and then main.js. And what that's going to do is just going to make a main.js file inside of the mobile request tutorial folder. And then from there, you want to initialize the project with main.js as the starting point. So you're going to type in the command npm init, and what that's going to do is going to take you through a prompt that just initializes the repository with certain settings and options that you configure. And so as you see here, you can just press enter to skip through these. You don't really need to focus on these right now. We'll just put a simple description in for making a request to mobile apps API. All right, so now that that's all done, we'll just clear this out. And what you guys want to do is open up your text editor. So I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code. So yeah, just open up Visual Studio Code or whatever your text editor is. And now, since we've already created our repository, we could simply just open a folder that we created, which will be located on our desktop. And as soon as we open that, we'll be able to start coding our project. So I'm just gonna wait for this to load here. All right, so once you have your text editor open, what you want to do is open a folder, and then you're gonna browse your system, and you're just gonna go to your desktop. See, my desktop's already open here, so you're gonna go to your desktop, and your project should instantly, well, not instantly, should already be there since we've already initialized it and whatnot. And so, yeah, as you can see, it's right here, and you see my main.js file, and you see the entire folder that was created, and you see package.json, which is just again some configuration items. So before we make our first request, we're gonna look at exactly what a request is, and I'm gonna try to help you guys build an understanding. So let's get right into that. So essentially, an HTTP request occurs when an HTTP client sends raw packets in the form of a request message to the server. And these request messages can take different forms. The three I'm going to be introducing you guys to today are get, post, and put requests. So I thought it best to explain requests through visual. So as you see here, when you log onto the Footlocker's mobile app, instantly requests are being made. So what I want to highlight here is when you click shop all on shoes, it sends a GET request to the mobile API, and it returns all the shoes for you to see visually. And so how it happens on the back end is just the packet sent with the URL and query string and header information, and then it returns all those products. And so with the post request, similar thing is happening, except generally a post request is going to be used to like add a product to cart, as you see here. So I select size 9.5, add to cart, and then it's going to send form data with information about the shoe or the item, and then similar to the to the GET request, it's going to send a header, URL information, and sometimes query strings. Go back to Visual Studio Code, and now we're just going to set up the framework for building our requests. So what we want to do first is, if you're using Visual Studio Code, you can press Control apostrophe, and it'll open up your terminal within the application. And so if you're not using Visual Studio Code, feel free to just go back to the regular terminal for your operating system. And so first, what we're going to do, we're going to install two repositories that are needed to start making requests. So we're going to install request and request-promise. So to do that, what we're going to do, we're going to type in command npm I dash dash save, and then request, the two frameworks we want, request, and then request-promise. Sorry, not request with an S. And then request-promise. And so now that we have those two frameworks installed, we're just, well, like, let's just wait. So now that we have those two installed, what we're gonna do is we're gonna implement them into our project. So what we're gonna to do that, we gonna create a variable or constant, and we're gonna name it RP, and then set it equal to require request-promise, and that's how you import a framework into your project. And so that's the only one we needed to require. And so I'm going to be using request-promise, and don't think it has anything to do with like speed or optimization. It's not necessarily faster than original request library, but what it is, it's essentially like a helper framework which wraps all requests and promises, and I just find it like a lot cleaner. So we're just gonna set up a variable here called var query products, and what that is, it's gonna be our function. So since I'm using ES6, I'm gonna use an arrow function, and for now I'm just gonna require one argument, and we're just gonna call that URL. And so within this function, what we want to do first is set in variable options equal to the options, our request options. So and we're also going to have to put the URI for the endpoint we're requesting. And so we're going to have to find that. And now let's jump over to Charles Proxy, and I can show you guys how to find the mobile endpoints within footlocker.com. Okay, guys, so this is Charles Proxy. Um, so I'm just going to clear out my SSL proxy settings so far so I can just show you guys this fresh as though it's my first time using the application. So what you want to do first is you want to come over to proxy settings, and you want to make sure the port is set to 8888. And what that's going to do is basically allow you to connect to your device. It's the port you're going to need to input into your Wi-Fi settings. So here I have my iPhone up. What you want to do is connect to your Wi-Fi network, click the I, then you want to go to proxy settings, and then you want to go to manual, and then you want to so now you want to locate your server IP address. And what I usually do is open a network utility on Mac, and as you see here, my IP address is 10.61.9.9. This is my university's public Wi-Fi, so I'm not too worried about giving the IP address out. And then you see for the port, I put in the 4.8s, and so instantly you see the requests pop up here on the left in Charles Proxy. And those are just like the requests being made from my phone like via various apps. So what we're gonna do now is come over to Footlocker, and you should see requests start popping up. Yeah, see, these are the requests Footlocker makes when you first open the application. So yeah, you don't worry about those yet, but this is where all the requests are gonna pop up that we're gonna need to look at. So what you want to do is you want to left click, well, control click on Mac, and click enable proxy settings, enable SSL proxy settings, and now what that's gonna allow you to do is see the request being made, the API request being made every time you click certain things on the application. So what I'm gonna do now is go to shop mins, and then I'm going to scroll down to shop all as we did earlier and see the request being made when I'm clicking on shop all. And so now I come over to Footlocker API products, and you see here 3 requests were sent. So now we need to figure out which of these 3 requests is the one that we're gonna need to see all the product like all the shoes and all the products. So it looks like it may be this request here, and yeah, from the looks of it, it is. So yeah, this is the request we're going to be using. So we just need to require all the packet information for this request. So yeah, here's the request we're going to be using. Well, the endpoint we're going to be using. Sorry, let's trying to give you guys some vocabulary terms here. So yeah, you just want to copy the endpoint and then go back over to the Visual Studio Code, and we're just going to change this var to let, and then the var for the function to a constant. Just some JavaScript things. And so now for the first option in JSON format, you want to put the URI. And so this is not where it's not gonna be the final version of the URL. We're just gonna use this for now, just so we can pick apart the pieces. So essentially, this last portion of this URI is actually a query string. And so what a query string is essentially kind of sort of like form data in a post request, in that it allows you to put certain parameters and name those parameters and adjust the values for those parameters so you can request specific information from the endpoint. So as you see here, so for example, you see the current page equals 0. So like that means that the current page that we want from the request is currently set to the first page, which starts at 0. So that's all that means. And usually this varies per like request. Sometimes requests are sometimes get requests are sent with query strings, other times they're not. So just be on the lookout for those, and this is what it looks like. So we're just gonna you know take apart this long URL here and actually put it into a query string. So we start with current page, set that to 0. Then we take the query. We're gonna just copy and paste the query, and then we're gonna do the product. I mean, sorry, not product type. We're gonna do the page size. And what essentially this is, it's gonna return the number of products, whichever number you designate in this slot. Excuse me. So the max number Footlocker allows you to request at a time is 200 products. So for video purposes, we're just gonna use 75 and not 200 because we don't want to use the max. I just want to show you guys exactly what you can do with this, and yeah, and then you can just manipulate it your own way, figure out certain things certain data you can retrieve and how you can manipulate that data. All right, so now we can jump back over to Charles here, and we're just gonna get some header information from Footlocker's API, and so here we're gonna look at the domain. So you just want to copy and paste that, and then instead of this function taking an argument of URL, we're gonna change that to taking the domain as an argument, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna set constant test domain equal to www.footlocker.com. And so then what we're going to do is make a call to our query products function and just pass the test domain in as the domain argument. And so we just want to clean up the query products function a little bit. So we're just going to change the URL now. We're going to implement our domain into that. So an easy way to do this in JavaScript is to wrap your text in apostrophes, and then within that put $, and then curly brackets, and then put your variable. So the variable here would be the domain. And then at the end of this, we just want to add the endpoint that we're trying to request. So currently we have our query string, and now we have our URL properly formatted. So next in the packet, what we want to add are the headers. So we're just going to add the argument headers here, colon, and then set that back up for JSON format, and then jump back over to Charles. And so you can see here all the headers sent in this request. So we're just going to copy all those, then paste them back in Visual Studio Code within the curly brackets of the headers argument, well, object key if you want to be specific. And so now what we're gonna do is just format this into JSON. So you're just gonna wrap each of the text within into single quotations, and then separate the key with the colon, and then wrap the key also in single quotes, and yeah, just JSON format. So once you've done that, we're all ready to move on to the next step of making a request. So what you want to do is outside of the options variable, you want to put the command rp, and then set a parentheses, and then go ahead and insert the options variable as the argument. And then so since we're using request dash promise, every request is a promise essentially, and so every promise comes standard with another promise as the return value, and so you can call dot then on the RP when you call RP options, and then within dot then you just want to put your response, and then we're just gonna log that to the console, and then in the case of any errors, we want to use a dot catch after the dot then, and then pass in an error as the argument, and then just log that to the console as well. So since now we're all finished up with this function, we're ready to go ahead and test to see if it works correctly. So since we've already made the call to the function, all we have to do now is run the command node and then main, and then as you see here, that should log if it if your request was sent successfully, that should just log all the products to the console, just as it did in within Charles. And so once you have that completed, pretty much we're all done. And there's nothing much else that you need to do. If you want to figure out how to like manipulate the data more and figure out more information, maybe figure out how to make your own monitor or sneaker bot, just stay tuned for future videos. And yeah, thank you guys for watching.